Welcome back everyone, it's Eric from Rare Candy here, and today we are back with another Unified Minds deck profile, and today we're going to be taking a look at the new Dark Box deck. This deck in particular was actually selected to be covered by one of our patrons, Chris Campbell, over at patreon.com/rarecandytcg. So depending on how much one of our patrons decides to pledge to us, one of the perks is they actually get to choose topics they want to see us do videos on. And in this case, Chris wanted to see some of the new dark attackers from the new Unified Mindset, so that's what we have here. So if you guys want to learn more about how to have an even bigger say over the types of content we put out on this channel, I will have a link down below in the description for you to check that out. And also too, this is the same list that was featured in our recent testing rounds video, so if you guys did miss that and you want to see this deck in action, I will also have a link down below in the description for you to check out that as well. But with that being said, let's get into Dark Box here and see what we have. So up first we have our primary attacker of the deck, I guess more so for like the early game, and that's going to be the new Umbreon and Darkrai GX. So it's one of the new dark tag teams that we are getting in Unified Minds, and it has two different attacks, the first of which is going to be Dark Lance, or I think it's Black Lance actually. Yeah, so for 2 dark and a colorist does 150 and then does 60 to one of your opponent's bench GXs or EXs. So this is, kind of just like a nice little two-shotting attack, almost kind of similar to the old Darkrai EX from back in the day, but kind of souped up for today's format and the power creep we've had since then. So like I said, a lot of times we're just going to be two-shotting things with this, that's fine. And then it does have a GX attack of its own, just for a single colorless energy, Dark Moon GX. Your opponent can't play trainer cards from their hand during their next turn, but if you have 5 additional energy, your opponent's active is knocked out as well. So this is actually a pretty cool attack, both in the early and kind of the mid to late game as well. So I've even found myself burning this GX attack as soon as the first turn of the game sometimes, because we're a deck that we don't really put on a whole lot of pressure on turn 1. We really don't get going till turn 2, sometimes even turn 3, depending on how our turn 2 goes. And a lot of times it might just be better to kind of slow your opponent down, especially if they are a more aggressive archetype. Like if they go first and just kind of pop off and are threatening potentially a strong turn 2, you can go in with the Dark Moon GX and hopefully slow them down a bit to allow you some time to set up here. So like I said, this is going to be our primary attacker in the early game, but we also do have one copy of the new Mega Sableye and Tyranitar GX, another one of the new dark tag teams that we're getting in Unified Minds. So this guy is pretty beefy, 280 HP. Similarly, both of its attacks very beefy in terms of their damage and energy cost. They both cost 4 dark and a colorist, the first of which does 210, and then if your opponent's active is knocked out and they are a GX or EX, you get to take 1 additional prize, which is actually really nice. This actually really combos nicely with the Umbreon Darkrai because we are going to be two-shotting things and setting up future KOs. So inevitably our opponent is going to retreat once we hit them for 150, so at some point we can custom catcher them up and get an extra prize whenever we take a knockout. And the 50 snipe damage, or I'm sorry, the 60 snipe damage is actually pretty relevant as well, because we can, ping one of our opponent's bench GXs for 60, and then if they're forced to retreat into it, since they'll probably have less damage on it than the Pokemon we hit for 150, our Mega Sableye Tyranitar can come in with that 210, clean up the knockout, and also get 4 prizes, which is pretty wild if you can knock out tag teams with this thing. Also, of course, just nice being able to go custom catcher to Dene, take 3 prizes off just a little bench sitter like that as well. So this first attack is definitely, I think, the main reason to play this card, but the GX attack isn't too bad either. Same attack cost, does just a flat 250, which is nice against a lot of different things, but also if you have 5 additional energy, discard the top 15 cards of your opponent's deck. So this thing, is very difficult to actually get set up, the secondary effect at least. So you're not going to use that too much. I think most of the time you're just going to use the flat 250 or probably Dark Moon GX, since they are pretty similar in attack cost. But this actually is pretty good against Shedinja if that winds up being a popular deck. I know that's been kind of a deck that some people have predicted to be pretty good in this Worlds or like post-rotation format. So you do have an answer to it there in the form of that. So yeah, this guy is primarily going to be more for the mid to late game once we have a bunch of energy in play. And then from there we have one copy of the new Mewtwo and Mew GX. For that perfection ability here, allows us to copy the attacks of any of our Pokemon GX in our discard pile or on our bench. So of course we can pull attacks from whichever tag team we want, but there's a couple of reasons to running Mewtwo Mew over, for example, the second Mega Sableye Tyranitar, which I think some people might gravitate towards. So we do play Treasure in this list, and by playing Mewtwo and Mew, basically every different search card in our deck gives us an out to an attacker. Whether it's Communication, Cherish Ball, or Mysterious Treasure, they all can find some form of attacker here. We also don't play Night City or Dark City, I forget what it's called, but we don't play that in this particular list. So if we are unfortunate enough to start with a Mega Sableye Tyranitar, if we played like 2 instead, as I said, it's going to be much more difficult to move out of the active, whereas Mewtwo Mew is a solid starter because we can still attack with the Umbreon and Darkrai GX as well. And also too, you can just hit opposing Mewtwo Mews for weakness, which is pretty nice. So if you are playing like a heavier count of like the Night City Stadium card, I think there is consideration to bumping this up to a second Mega Sableye instead. But since we aren't playing that, like I said, I'm favoring the Mewtwo Mew in this instance. So up next, we're going to get into some of the ways we are going to be manipulating our energy in this deck. 'Cause that's definitely going to be an important part at setting up these, big chunky 3 to 5 energy attack costs. So up first, we have a Weavile GX line. We're playing a 2/2 of the new Weavile GX from Unified Minds. We're playing it for this ability. It allows us to move a basic dark energy from one of our Pokemon to another. So very similar to the old Aromatisse, the old Hydreigon, Kling, etc. We've seen these Pokemon before, all to pretty, decent degrees of success. And this one's, going to help allow us to basically pivot into whatever attack we want. Like let's say we attack with Umbreon Darkrai GX, it gets attacked. Well, we can move the energy to a different attacker and kind of change gears and do that whole type of thing. Also, we do play the Naganadel in this list as well, so we can use that ability to get energy into play and then move it to an attacker as well. So that's the whole reason behind Weavile. It does have a couple of attacks I guess I can point out. The first of which is 2 dark and a colorless to do 130. So not too great, but sometimes there are situations where it's good, where for example, if we did 150 with Umbreon Darkrai, we can come in and clean up the knockout on like tag teams as an example. You don't want to most of the time just because this is a core component of the deck. You don't want to get knocked out, but you do have the option. GX attack also not too great though. Just for a colorist, search your deck for as many basics as you like, put them on your bench. So ideally we never want to use that if possible. And also too, I will briefly highlight, we are playing the 70 HP Sneasel here from Ultra Prism. Has this Sneaky Smash attack. If it's our first turn going second, we can discard an energy from one of our opponent's Pokemon. So again, this is kind of another way we can slow down our opponent. Like I said, we don't really have aggressive first turns. So between this, Darkmoon GX, we have some ways to actually kind of slow down the pace of the game just a little bit for us there. So going on to Naganadel, this is going to be the other core component of our energy manipulation engine. So we have 3 Poipole, specifically the one from Forbidden Light, and then we have 3 copies of Naganadel as well. So of course, like I mentioned, Naganadel has that charging up ability. We can, once during our turn, attach a basic energy from discard to this Pokemon. So ideally, we can pitch away some dark energies, get them into play with Naganadels, then move them to our attackers with Weavile GX. So this whole combo, it's kind of similar to the Quagsire Naganadel engine we've had for a little while now. But we have generally, I think, some stronger attackers, a little beefier attackers at the very least. But Naganadel actually does have a somewhat relevant attack as well here. So for 3 color synergy, 80, plus 80 more if we have 3 prizes remaining. In this type of format, I really don't think that's that bad because a lot of tag teams do look to be popular, and if we knock out a tag team, we're down to 3 prizes, and we have the option at doing 160 with a 1 prizer, which can sometimes be kind of nice here too. So right now I am choosing to play this over the Sharpedo as well. I do want to point out, I know some people have been experimenting with that idea, but overall I've kind of found the Naganadel to be a little bit better. Sharpedo is sometimes better in the early game, and I think that's one area where it kind of does shine. It allows for some very explosive turn 2 sometimes, but I think specifically in the mid to late game, Naganadel really shines just because you can get constant use out of this ability, whereas Sharpedo is just kind of like a one-time effect. So I definitely think there's pros and cons to each one, but right now I think I am kind of favoring this version if I did have to pick one out of the ones I've tested so far. So going on from there, we have 1 copy of Ditto Prism Star. This is going to, of course, allow us the flexibility of evolving into either the Naganadel or the Weavile GX, just giving us a little bit of flexibility whenever we are choosing what basics we want to search out in the early portions of the game. Then up next, we have 1 copy of Darkrai Prism Star. And this is a card I'm happy to finally see get some play here. It's been around for quite some time. Came back in Ultra Prism. It hasn't really been too great up until now, but you get to bench it from hand and attach 2 Dark Energies with it. So a lot of times, like let's say turn 2, we might have our Weavile, but we might not have our Naganadels. So sometimes this is another way we can get some additional energy into play to guarantee like a turn 2 attack. And also, even in the mid to late game, sometimes it's good just to throw down and allow us to be able to have access to some of these beefier attacks like Mega Sableye Tyranitars, or even Umbreon Darkrai GX's GX attack, with the secondary effect fulfilled. So it just helps us get energy into play. And then from there, we have 1 copy of the Dene GX to round out our Pokemon line, guys. We're using it, of course, just for that Dene change ability. Allows us to discard our hand and draw 6. So this is nice. We can bail ourselves out of a dead hand, or we can dig just to hit certain cards on certain turns. And this is actually another reason why I think I do like the Naganadel version more, is because Dedenne doesn't hurt quite as much. Like if you have a couple of energy in your hand, you can discard them and then get them back with the Naganadel. So actually, sometimes it's a positive to discard things, whereas the Sharpedo version, you really don't want to a lot of the time. But that's going to be the entire Pokemon line for the deck. Let's head into some of the trainers here. So up first, we have 4 copies of Lily, of course, to draw until we have 6, or draw until we have 8 if it's the first turn of the game. For Cynthia, this is going to be just a nice shuffle and draw 6. Kind of a standard supporter lineup we're seeing in most decks right now. And then we have we have 1 copy of Erica's Hospitality here. So this is, kind of a good supporter in the mid to late game sometimes. You can only play it if you have 4 or fewer cards remaining in your hand, excluding the Erica's Hospitality, but you draw equal to the amount of Pokemon your opponent has in play. So specifically in the mid to late game, it's kind of hard to get a really strong effect off of Lily. Lily's going to be best ideally on turn 1 when you can draw up to a higher amount. So this is a slightly less restrictive form of draw power, unlike Lily in the later stages of the game, but we of course want to run it in low counts just because it's not a card you want to open with on the first turn of the game. So going on, next we have 2 stadium cards in the form of Viridian Forest. So we get to discard a card from our hand, search our deck for a basic energy, put it into our hand. And of course this is going to allow us to discard like a dark energy, use charging up to get that dark energy in play, and still attach 1 for turn. So that's kind of like the main combo that we're going to be going for with this card here. But then from there we also have 1 copy of the new, or not, I guess it's really not too new at this point, came out in Team Up, but it's going to be Black Market Prism Star. But it says whenever a dark Pokemon with any dark energy gets knocked out, it gives up 1 fewer prize. So that's going to basically turn our Umbreon Darkrais and Mega Sableye Tyranitars into 2 prize attackers instead of 3, which is pretty nice. And just in general, I actually think there's a number of different stadiums that this deck can potentially abuse. Of course, we have the Viridian Forest, we have the Black Market, but of course we do have the new Dark City or Night City. Again, I forget the name of it off the top of my head. I think it's slightly less good in the Naganadel version, though, just because we don't even mind manually retreating, since we can keep the energies in play with Naganadel. So it's still good, but it's less necessary than in the Sharpedo version, just as an example. But then even Lysander Labs, I think that's another card that is a consideration here as well. So definitely feel free to play around with the stadiums, but right now these are the ones I'm opting for. Next up, we have 4 copies of Custom Catcher, of course, to choose what we want to take knockouts on. This is one of the only decent gusting effects we have in the new format. But it says if we play 1 of them, we get to draw up to 3 cards, and then if we play 2, we get to switch our opponent's active with one of their bench Pokemon. So we are primarily like a 2-shotting deck, like I said. So it is going to be important to have ways at cleaning up knockouts. So of course, after we use Black Lance or Dark Lance, whatever it's called, do 150, we're going to need to bring that Pokemon back up to finish it off at some point probably. And of course, like I said, since we're playing Mega Sableye Tyranitar, its attack is just too good to not play something like Custom Catcher to get that extra prize whenever you take knockouts. Up next, we have 4 copies of Super Scoop Up. Flip a coin, if heads, put one of your Pokemon, all cards, attach them back into your hand. So this is kind of a card I don't like to have to run, but unfortunately we did lose Max Potion in the rotation, so this is kind of like the next best thing. So popular play we've seen with these styles of energy manipulating decks in the past is, after your attacker gets damaged, you move all the energy off, Max Potion, then move the energy back and keep attacking. So this is kind of like the next best thing. We can move our energy off our damaged Pokemon, Super Scoop Up, get that Pokemon out of harm's way, heal it off, then move that energy back to a different Pokemon and keep attacking. So it's definitely not quite as good as Max Potion in this deck just because it's on a coin flip, and you have to make sure you have a way to get that Pokemon back into the active if you want to keep attacking with it. But nevertheless, it's still a very, very strong effect, and I think you almost have to run it just because the turns it works, it's just so impactful on a game. Next up, we have 3 copies of Acrobike here. So we get a look at the top 2 cards of our deck, pick one, discard the other. So we can pitch away Dark Energies and also just dig to hit certain combo pieces. Like especially on the second turn of the game, sometimes you don't get Weavile, Naganadel, and an attacker. So sometimes you will need ways to dig just a little bit deeper via Dedenne, via Acrobikes to hit those combo pieces that you need to make sure you get your whole engine like set up. Next up, we have 3 copies of Pokemon Communication here. So we get to put a Pokemon from our hand back into our deck and get a different Pokemon. This is going to be probably our best form of generic search in this new format. So this will allow us access to any of the Pokemon in our deck, but we are playing some other more limiting sort of search options. The first of which, of course, is going to be Mysterious Treasure, which I already did mention. So of course, with this, we discard a card from our hand, then search our deck for a Psychic or Dragon Pokemon, put it into our hand. So we can toss away an energy, get that energy back with Naganadel, and then move that energy with Weavile, etc. And so of course we can search out our Mewtwo, our Poipole, our Naganadels, and it's just very important to get multiple Poipoles down, I think, on turn 1, and Mysterious Treasure is another way to help out with that a bit. And then from there we have 3 copies of Cherish Ball to round out our trainer cards. So again, this is going to be a little bit more restrictive in terms of what it can find than something like Communication, but allows you to search your deck for any Pokemon GX and put it into your hand. So we can grab any of our attackers, we can grab Dedenne, we can grab Weavile GX. So between all of these, they kind of come together to allow us access to basically whatever we need at a given point. And then to round out the list, we have 3, 6, 9, 11 copies of Dark Energy in total to round out our list here. So yeah, guys, that is going to be our attempt at the Dark Box deck here. Like I said, I did test the Sharpedo version and the Naganadel version. I think this is the version I'm kind of favoring right now. Just in general, I am liking this list as well. But like I did mention earlier, feel free to play around with the stadium counts. I definitely think these are something that could potentially change a little bit. I'll have to experiment a little bit more. But overall, I am liking this as a foundation to kind of build upon going forward. But again, a big shout out to our patron, Chris Campbell, for choosing this deck to be covered here on the channel. If you guys did enjoy this content, feel free to like and subscribe. And if you can, consider supporting us by becoming a patron over there at patreon.com/rarecandytcg, or by picking up some merch from our online store at rarecandytcg.com, like the playmat you saw in this video as an example. It would mean a lot. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.